Okay.
We'll be ready. I'm going to share the screen. And Dr. Revis, I've pulled it up just in case. I found in week 9 it was a PowerPoint that you had done last semester or previously anyway, but it was that one dealing with the needs assessment and the gap analysis. So I've pulled it up, or either you can pull it up, because after we get through with task 1 and 2, I'd like for us to pull that up and just show the connection based on what you've got in there.
Okay.
So
And when I talk about task 2, I just want to use the helpful hints document, I think.
yes, I think so too. Yeah. But
Okay.
I looked at that and I think I think it's a good tool for us to use at this point.
Okay.
Um,
Sounds good. Well, we're on the hour. Are we ready?
you want me to keep mine up, or are you gonna pull it up yourself?
No, you keep yours up.
Okay, and then when we get to that, I'll just pull it up and then we can talk from there.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Revis.
Well, good evening, 601. It is week 8, and we are going down on the other side of the hill as far as I'm concerned. And hopefully you too. We are finished with the AAPTEL. And of course, last night you were introduced to the AAPTEL. I apologize for not being with you last evening. I had a school board meeting and we did not get finished in time for me to join you, but I'm sure it was a real informative overview of the AAPTEL, and we're going to go more into task 1 and 2. Again, task 1 will be a review for you because we went to it last week, but let's review our norms for the meeting, if you don't mind. Just always remember to stay muted unless you're asked to speak or recognized to speak by the instructor. Please show your video during class, if at all possible. And it's great if you put your names in the bottom of your video. And I think most everyone's doing that right now, letting your family know that you're in class during this time, and hold all questions until the end of class. So if we can agree on those things, we will get started with some comments about the AAPTEL. Dr. Stedman and I run a little competition, I think, when we get our scores back from the evaluators. And right now, I only have 2 that haven't been scored, and my class has all 4s. So pat yourself on the back. And for those 2 who are waiting to be scored, the pressure's on you now for us to keep this as a perfect 4.0 class. So congratulations, guys. You may think that Dr. Stedman and I are being very particular and picky when you give you feedback, particularly when we tell you, be sure you place this disclaimer in this spot. And that's because we just know where reviewers are going to look for it. And they don't like to have to look for things. And I appreciate your willingness to comply to some of those probably you thinking are just crazy picky things, but we have learned through the years and working with our students what the evaluators are looking for. And we know you've worked hard on this task. I was talking to one student, 72 pages. Guys, that's as much as a chapter in a dissertation. 72 pages once you put this all together. You've done a lot of work, and we want to see you get recognized with your evaluation score and with all that hard work. So kudos to my class.
Right. And likewise, Dr. Revis now, Dr. Revis has one group, I have 2 groups, so I have a much larger percentage to work with 2 groups. But Dr. Revis, 98, 99% of my students have scored 4s as well. And the other ones have done, it would still be A quality work. for the most part. But it was, again, it's like you said, when I went back and looked at the evaluators' comments, it was the work could have easily been fours. So it's just very, very important that you do please adhere to everything that we ask you to do. And at the end, unless it's at the very end and you're past again, it's not a competition who can get it submitted first. We want to make sure that when you do submit it, don't say I'm going to get this off my plate. We want you to get it off your plate, but make sure that when it's off your plate, it's off your plate because you have done everything that you know within your power to make it look good. So I would say the small handful that I can count on 3 fingers, if it was not a 4, then make sure that you do what is necessary this time to strive for that 4. But again, we've gotten nothing but you saw one of the evaluators' comments last night. Dr. Lamb shared that from Dr. Meisenheimer, Dr. Revis. And so he shared that comment, and we've worked with her a long time. And coming from her, that means a lot. Am I right, Dr. Revis?
She is a tough evaluator. She really is.
She is very, very tough. So that says a lot. But anyway, it's behind us. I will say this, and then we're going to move on. If all of your work is not in Blackboard at this point for the AAPTEL, then pretty much you're behind. So, you need to go back and check my grades. There are, and I know it's just been an oversight, but you need to go back and check. There's a couple that have not put their screenshots in there. That's important because that's actually the last thing you should be doing in Blackboard for the AAPTEL. And then I think I may have a couple that may have forgotten to submit. I know you were there because you were in the other videos, but you may have thought you had submitted your case study, but you have not. So you need to check and make sure that everything is there, because after we talk about the case study, we move on, and the AAPTEL is history. Dr. Revis, anything about the case study that you would like to share?
Well, I heard some really good case study conversations, and I'll finish mine up this evening, so this afternoon. And as I told you last week, if I didn't hear you pull from the work of the AAPTEL and talk about the AAPTEL process or some of your readings and research, then you could not score 100. And so I think everyone except for one person maybe always made a comment and backed it up with either the AAPTEL process and or something from your readings with an author stated. And so that's what we call, a very good scholarly conversation, when you back your opinions up with research or with the work from the course. And so what I was looking for there is to see if you could apply the AAPTEL process to this case study scenario. And of course, we were looking for you to talk about doing a data dive. The principal knew that the reading scores were poor and had to be improved, but there was no data dive. They didn't know where the scores were, what area was the biggest need, either by grade level or curriculum strand. So they're always, and you see this even in the AAPTEL, always look at your data. You've got to do a data dive first and see where you are. And then next, look at the research, what matches up and aligns to the most pressing need. And then lastly, I wanted to hear something about building an action plan with learning targets and goals. And, that's how schools move forward when they implement the plans and work the plans. So those were the things that I was looking for. And I felt that for the most part, everybody was very prepared and did very well on that case study.
And I likewise, I could say the same thing about all of mine as well, Dr. Evans. One of the things that really impressed me was everybody that took the role of the Zoom master, they were extremely well prepared. Probably some of the best preparation that I can remember going into this activity from the Zoom leader. So everybody was involved, and I liked the way that every one of the leaders made sure that every topic had equal amount of time to be covered. It was thoroughly covered. They kept the pace going. They had it already pre-planned so that when the participants came into the meeting, that they pretty much knew what to expect, so they didn't have to waste a lot of time taking care of those incidental type things. They could move right on into the task at hand. But overall, I just say a job well done on the case study. So
I agree. And Dr. Stephen, let's back up and talk about the competency folio just
okay,
a moment.
okay. I'm sorry. And we were. I skipped over it though. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to say for Dr. Stedman's two classes, if you have not gone back in to the folio and read my comments, you need to do that. About 7 out of the C2 section and maybe 7, 8 out of the other section need to go back in and fine tune some things. Maybe you missed putting an artifact in one, uploading an artifact for one. Maybe you mislabeled one. Whatever, my comments are in there. And a couple of you forgot to total up your number of hours on our mid-semester log check. So, just go back in and make sure this week that you take care of any of those comments, and then you request comments from me only on those that you are revising.
Again, please, 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 when you go back in and make revisions, do not check all of them, only the ones that need to be looked at again. And if you're in my class, then Dr. Revis is the one looking at them. You don't need to submit my name to. And if you're in Dr. Revis's class, don't submit her name, because guess what? We have to open them up no matter what. So please, please, please don't do that.
But overall, I felt they were well done.
Yeah, they were. Dr. Revis, I've got, unless they've come in since I've sat down at the computer this afternoon, I still have 3 of your students that I have not seen anything from, the folio or the internship log, and I'm just going to say that's unacceptable. And then I have one that I have the folio, but I don't have the internship log. That's unacceptable. And as I said, I'm going to reach out to administration to find out if indeed, the work is being done, because, at this point, if you are waiting to get this done and you haven't done it, I don't know how you're going to get 200 hours done between now and the end of this semester. So I hope that that's not the case, Dr. Revis. And
I do too.
I'm going to move on. I will be dealing with you individually after tonight as I need to. So just please, if this is you, and I don't want you to be afraid of me. I want you to do it, but I expect you to do it, and Dr. Revis does too. So,
and I think I'll have to say that during the AAPTEL process, we really try to be understanding and know that this may be your first graduate course in a while. All of you have master's degree, but it may have been a while since you've been in a program. And so we try our best to work with you. Yes, if you turn in late work, it's going to be counted late, just like you would in your class. We have deadlines for a reason. But When we start the work of the AAPTEL, we have got to do a gradual release because Dr. Stedman and I have been very available to you. I know I've had people text me, email me, and expect a response almost immediately. From here on out, guys, I'm going to ask you to do what you ask your students to do. Ask 3 before me. And that means depend on your Zoom team and dig it back out of your recorded sessions. Okay? Dr. Stedman and I reflect. Every time we have a class session, we reflect. If we forget something, we'll do like we did, was it last week? We made an extra video to upload. We try to be very cognizant that we're giving you everything that we know to do, but you have got to start digging this out without using us so much. Your administrator, your instructors in 602 and 603 will not respond to you the way we've been doing. Now, if you ask your Zoom team members, you go back and you look at the recordings and still don't understand, please email me. That is my preferred method. We both work during the day, and so it's very hard for us. I tell you my biggest downfall. I'll read a text message, and once I read it, if I can't respond, I forget about it. So don't text. Let's do the email. And we check it multiple times during the day. So we're going to try to pull back a little bit so that you can become more independent.
Tina, based on our norms, is this something that can wait until the end of the class when we answer questions?
Yes, it can wait.
Okay, thank you. Let's look. This is week 7 that should have already been done. We've already talked about that. Let's quickly look at this. Week 8, if you've done everything, if everything has been submitted, then week 8, basically, there is no assignment due this Sunday. Now, if you have not done everything, then, and that applies to, I can hold it on my little finger, then your work is late. So get it to us. However,
I want to reemphasize. May I reemphasize? Go look at my grades.
Right.
I know I'm having trouble, Dr. Stedman. If somebody doesn't submit by the deadline on 6:00 p.m., I put a 0 in. And then if they submit late, I'm having trouble getting that late grade to stay. I don't know what I'm doing, but
I'll show you. I know what
it reverts back to that original 0. So check your grades. If you have any questions, email me.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Revis. This is where I want you to look at the bottom, the note. Begin working on the AAPTEL after we go over things again tonight. Plan and use your time wisely. I will tell you, I have 2 students that have already cleared task 1 of the AAPTEL. I've told them to move on to task 2, but they've got to do their peer reviews and they've got to get some feedback. But they've cleared task 1 already, and it was task 1 is not a hard. The research is there, but it's not a hard task. The really hard work is going to come when you get to task 2, and you have to really apply everything, based on task 1. So there's where we are now. Week 9 next week. That's fall break for the school, but not for you, based on your work. Okay, you've still got work that's due. We're not coming online next week. What is due next week? Let's look. After we talk tonight, the AAPTEL task 1 that we're going to go over with tonight, no later than not this Sunday night, but next Sunday night, we need to see AAPTEL task 1 draft in Blackboard's discussion board. Now, Dr. Revis, what I'm thinking should happen, that based on the work ethic that I've seen from most of the students from all 3 classes, I would not be surprised if we didn't see the majority of this task one by this week. I would love to see it by this week. And my challenge to you is don't rush, but you can get it done. And I'm telling you this because task 2 is going to require a lot more work from you. That gives you next week to really buckle down and to do all of that work that you've got to do out in the school for task 2. And then you will still have the next week when we come back, week 10, to work with it and to get it ready for a final submission. So task 2 really, it will give you a good almost 2 weeks to get task 2 perfected, because I will tell you, we will camp out with task 2 and your evaluators really camp out on task 2, which means that that once you get task 1 done, and again, not this week, okay, not this week, but next week, we won't have class on Tuesday, but guess what is due Tuesday? Your 2 peer reviews. Okay? Or the next, I'm saying the next Tuesday when we come back for class. You have nothing due this week. You don't have peer reviews next week, but the week we come back, week 10, that's when your peer reviews, start. You can see right there when they're due, 10/24. Okay. So I wanted to go ahead and share that with you so that you would have an idea as we're talking about task 1 and 2, how you need to make this work. And Dr. Revis, with that in mind, I'm going to pull up, I want to go here. I want to go to week 8, and I want you to look over to the left. Everything that you're doing in Blackboard now, remember, this is the last thing for the AAPTEL, the final screenshot. You're working below the AAPTEL final screenshot. From this point on, there's your AAPTEL task and prompt that explains, basically what each task and each prompt is about. This is your AAPTEL template and material section, the task for review, the completed peer review Dropbox, like you had before, the AAPTEL assignment Dropbox, the AAPTEL turn it in that you don't do until the end, the AAPTEL final screenshot that you don't do until the end. So the process is going to be the same. Now, the only time that you're going to go back up is when it's time for you to do case study 2, and then we'll go back up to case study 2 that was blended up there with the AAPTEL, and we'll talk about that when that time gets here. I want to point this out under the AAPTEL template and material section. As we're talking about task 1 and task 2, I want you to look at all these topics that we've got in there. Now, you've heard there's the MTSS for teachers, Marzano high yield strategies. You're going to hear this language, competencies. Marzano's 9 high yield instructional strategies, and again, instructional leadership teams, what is needs assessment, and the 5 topics that we're going to talk about. We have already provided you some information that you can choose to use. This is, if the research that you find in these readings work with the work you're doing, then by all means but there's a topic here for each of the 5 topics that you will have to do research on. So just know that we've provided you with lots of information that you can use. Qualtrics notes that Dr. Lamb's going to be talking about on Thursday. So make sure that you avail yourself to this information that we have under week 8, and there's some things under week 9 as well. Your template. Okay, I want us to look at the template again. Again, your cover page, your name here. and it shows AAPTEL Task Evidence 2. Again, if it's in black, remember it stays. If it's in yellow, that means that you've got to do narrative work, and we're going to talk about that. And then if it's in red, those are wonderful tidbits of information that you probably would like to consider in the narrative work that you're doing. So make sure that you pay attention to the template and follow the template verbatim. But we want to camp out with the AAPTEL Helpful Hints document. And Dr. Revis, with that in mind, if you would just, we're not going to camp out a long time here, but let's give them a brief overview of what Task 1, Prompt 1 is all about.
Okay, we talked about this last week, and we gave you some authors that we expect to see in some of these different sections. So this is all about research. In Task 1, there is no PLC work. This is your work. You have to go through each of these 5 areas and, of course, find three references and resources. And for the first one, on building efficacy, we want to see Todd Whitaker there. He's big on building efficacy. Bandura. And then another one is Sean Hattie.
Right.
And of course, you can also look back at those resources that are already uploaded into the Blackboard shell that Dr. Stedman just shared with you.
Okay,
So,
and hold your fingers up. What's the minimum number of references that you have to have for each of these 5 topics? The minimum number. 3. Thank you.
right. Now, if you use the same one over and over, that just counts as 1. So you got to use 3 distinctly different references. Under results, and let's just look at the length. How long? Well, I would expect 2 to 3 well-developed paragraphs on these topics. So you're trying to find out, what does the research say about building efficacy and empowerment among staff? And
Well,
how?
Dr. Revis, I have an opinion. Does my opinion count?
No, does not count. Don't. Right now, we're not talking about your school. We're talking about the research. Okay. In effective schools, how does building efficacy and empowerment build and translate into effective schools? And so you can see, I think this one's 4 paragraphs, maybe. The next section or heading is results-oriented professional development. I want to see Darling Hammond. She's one of the seminal researchers with results-oriented professional development. And Guskey, Guskey, is another one. And you can see there's Hammond et al. Please make sure that you are using correct APA in-text citations.
And look at there. That's from your textbook, up and all.
The next is recruitment, placement, and mentoring of staff. Now, here's where I've seen some people go awry. I don't want this to be about what your school uses. This is about what the research says about recruitment, placement, and mentoring of school staff, and how, if you are in an effective school, what this should look like.
And I think the key language, Dr. Revis, is you got to remember these are best practices. And then not just in your district, but anywhere. These are researched and evidence-based best practices that should apply anywhere.
Anywhere. And I don't know of an author here. I see Ingersoll quite a bit when I read through the candidate's work, but there's not really a seminal researcher that we see in this one. The next heading, approaches to or evaluation of school staff. I misspoke. This is the one where I see people get off on a tangent. We don't want to know what the North Carolina or South Carolina teacher evaluation system says. We want to know, what does the research say about effective approaches to evaluation of school staff?
And Dr. Revis, one of the things is none of the five at this point has anything to do specifically with your school
No.
at this point.
And so one of the seminal researchers here would be Marzano. He has done a lot of work with teacher evaluation. And we're talking not only formal but informal evaluations. I would expect to see something about walkthroughs, even though those are formative evaluations. They're still a type of evaluation. And then the last heading, teacher leadership and decision making. And here, the seminal researcher we want to see is Todd Whitaker.
Okay.
And you can see that this person started off with Whitaker.
Okay, so research, 5 sections, 5 headings. Each one must have a minimum of 3 references. You can have more, but a minimum of 3 references. Use the seminal researchers that we have down here: Whitaker, Darling, Hammond, Marzano, and then there's others that have been mentioned. Use those in your research. Again,
And Dr. Stedman, when I'm doing an in-text citation, do I put Todd Whitaker? Do I put no? I just put Whitaker.
You do not put his first name. No.
It's always APA, author, date. It's the way it always is. Author's last name and date. Now, in prompt 2 of task 1, task 1 has 2 prompts. You're going to create a checklist and a survey. You're only creating. That's all you're doing right now. What you're trying to do is ultimately in task 2, you're going to administer the survey and the walkthrough checklist. But right now, you're trying to survey about your school staff and how they feel that they have demonstrated teacher leadership across the school, teacher leadership and empowerment, and that's what the survey will gauge.
Dr. Revis, and we're going into the walkthrough instrument in just a minute, the checklist. But honestly, I thought about this today. Don't reinvent the wheel. We've almost given you prompt 2. I mean, it's almost a matter of putting your little bit of language up there and copying and pasting the survey and the checklist. Isn't that correct, Dr. Revis?
I see no reason whatsoever that you recreate a survey. This is the survey you need to use, and I'll tell you why. If you create your own survey, you may or may not be even putting down questions that will give you answers in those 5 areas. We're staying in those 5 areas. You'll have all the information you need to do your task 2.
So don't make it hard on yourself.
I'm saying my class, use this. Do not do anything else other than this, okay? It is a 5-question survey.
And remember, it still has to be approved by Dr. Lamb, and it goes to Qualtrics, which he's going to take you through that process on Thursday again.
Right. So you actually will put this survey into your task prompt 2. You're going to talk about, this is Todd Whitaker's survey on school teacher empowerment.
And that validates it. When you say that it's Todd Whitaker, 2000, that validates it because we know he's a seminal researcher. We know that.
You don't have to do any validation, and it's already been run through the test of validity and reliability. And Qualtrics will also give you some metrics on those things, but we're not going to get into all that.
Right.
Again,
we'll do that.
use this survey.
Now, remember, yesterday evening, I told you that the work with the AAPTEL is basically twofold. That we're looking at teachers and we're looking at teacher leadership and empowerment. Stacy, and we'll pick on you. Can you remember? We said we're looking at what was that twofold thing that we said we're working with the AAPTEL? Can you remember? We're looking at teachers where? Teacher leadership and empowerment where?
In the classroom?
In the classroom, and then we're looking where else?
In the school as a whole?
Outside the classroom, right. Thank you, Stacy. So with the checklist, with the survey, where would that be? Would that be inside the classroom or outside the classroom?
Outside.
Thank you. So we're looking at teacher leadership outside the classroom based on these 5 questions. And these 5 questions or these 5 statements, it gauges a lot of information. You will be amazed at how much you can get from just those 5 statements with teachers. And next, we're going to go to the checklist. The checklist gauges teacher leadership and empowerment inside the classroom. Dr. Revis?
So what we're going to do about the checklist is this. Number 1, if you use a walkthrough instrument in your school or your school district has one, use that instrument as your checklist for many reasons. First of all, if it's been used multiple times in your school or throughout your district, it already has been established with the reliability and validity checks. Okay? The second reason is you really want to look for things in that checklist because you're actually going to be the one going in to that classroom and observing teachers. And it's unfair. I believe it's unethical and unfair to go and look for things or expect things that teachers don't even know should be there, that they're not even expecting. So if you have a walkthrough, use your school walkthrough. If you do not have a walkthrough or district or school, then use this walkthrough, Marzano's High Yield Strategies. Don't create one. Now, what I have seen happen is, Dr. Stedman, that when we start talking about walkthrough forms, that schools that didn't have one start creating one. And that's okay. You don't really have time to start creating one for this task. If your school doesn't have a walkthrough checklist, yes, you do need to create one. But you're probably not going to have time to do that for this particular AAPTEL because that's going to take you some time. And that's going to take a lot of teacher input and a lot of PLC work, and you don't have time for that.
All right.
Okay?
So,
if you have a walkthrough, use it. If not, you're using this walkthrough format.
and guys, that's it. That's it for task
Yeah.
1. Now, you will have your reference section next, and you've got a minimum of 15 references there, a minimum. There could be more. And then an appendices only as applicable because at this point, you're not having to hold your PLC meeting at this point.
Dr. Stedman, scroll back up just a little bit. Impromptu, if all you do is show me a checklist and a walkthrough form, that's not enough. You got to have a little narrative work with.
Right.
I guess it's the template that has, or the example maybe that has the narrative.
It does, yes.
But you've got to introduce it. You've got to tell what you're using and why you're using it,
Right.
etc.
Right. So, okay, that leads us to task 2. Now, remember we said in task 1 that you are doing the research, based on the best practices for those 5 topics based on teacher leadership and empowerment based on those 5 topics. What does the research say? In prompt 2, you're going to see those same 5 topics, the same 5 headings. But guess what the difference is? This time, you're going to do some work in your school. That's where the survey that has been approved in task 1, this is where you actually send it out with your principal's approval. You send it out and you get the results back. And in task 1, this is what, well, let's go back to the 5 prompts. Let's look at them. It's the same headings all over again. Now, in task 1, you research building efficacy and empowerment among staff. This is what the research says in task 1. But in task 2, when it comes to building efficacy and empowerment among staff, what does it actually look like in your school, Quantina? What does it look like, Stacy, in your school and others? The research says this in task 1, but in my school, this is actually what is happening. And you know how you're going to base that? You're going to base that on, first of all, a lot of what you know because you work there. Secondly, you're going to base it on your survey results that you're going to send out. Thirdly, you're going to base it on your walkthroughs that you're going to conduct. Fourthly, you're going to base it on interviews with your administration, your principal, your assistant principal, your instructional coaches. Fifthly, you're going to base it on, you're going to meet with your PLC this time, and you're going to talk with them about, this, and you're going to ask your PLC team members, what do you see? And that is called a focus group. That PLC can be your focus group. It can be your grade level peers. It can be anybody, but you're going to have informal, it can be one-on-one conversations with them. But all of that, your data collecting, if you were doing a dissertation, Dr. Revis, what kind of research would that be if they're collecting data this way through conversations and surveys?
Well, your conversation data with your PLCs and with your administrators will be qualitative data that you're collecting. A survey data is typically quantitative data.
Quantitative, yes.
But guys, you've got to admit you've got to do the walkthrough data yourself and do those walkthroughs, and then you need to talk with your administrators about, this is what I'm seeing. Is this kind of similar to what you're seeing when you do your walkthroughs? And that's how you engage your administrators into this conversation.
Dr. Evans, look at how this starts out, though. Now, remember, you did research in task 1. You don't regurgitate the research, but you say enough to get started. You said, now, when I did my research based on the research in task 1 of the AAPTEL, Whitaker 2000, he believes the following. Then you lead on. Look at there. When comparing empowerment opportunities to data collected using the survey of best practices for teacher empowerment for school leadership, but there are several gaps between classroom practices observed at this school and what the research says best practices are. The survey was distributed, and you see how they spelled it out, and that should be 24 instead of written out. Only 41% of the teachers at this school feel as they have input on professional development offerings. And 35 indicated they play a role in the hiring process. You see, these are valid research results from the survey that you have conducted. It will tell you a lot about your own school.
And we expect to see those percentages
Exactly.
in your narrative.
Exactly.
What are the results of your survey data that aligns with this topic? And look, now we're talking about the observational walkthrough checklist.
Now, remember, you're narratively doing all this time. And you're going to go back and you're going to narratively talk about all 5 of those topics. And we're not going to go through each of these 5 because they repeat them. But when you get to them in task 2, you're going to restate an introduction based on what the research says, but then you're going to lead into your findings at your school. Go ahead.
And then the last paragraph of each section should talk about what your PLC identified as the gap.
And a lot of times that can say, in conclusion or in summary, a good way to bring it all, to tie it all together.
See, here it's coming up here. As a PLC, as a team on PLC, concurred that the gap. Okay. So in each section, it's a pattern, guys. Restate a little bit of the research, talk about what you found in your data collection, and then end it with your PLC identified these areas of concern, or these are the gaps, we should say here.
Right. Okay. Now, okay, and that's all 5 sections again. Now look at this. In task 1, the candidate researched the best practices for teacher empowerment and leadership in the school. In task 2, the candidate, again, is to take the same 5 areas and analyze the gaps between what the research says from task 1 to what was actually observed in each of these areas in the school for task 2, prompt number 1. Gaps in these 5 areas are to be addressed in narrative form using APA format and referencing sources identified in the literature as applicable. Okay, Dr. Revis, task 2, prompt 2.
And this repeats itself a lot. You do most of your narrative work in prompt 1. And then in prompt 2 is where you're going to display graphically and narratively the results of your survey and your walkthrough instrument. Now, you can't just throw those results out there. You got to talk about them a little bit. And this is where I would expect to see a summary of that walkthrough data collection. Now, here's some narrative. The following figure is a checklist, introducing the checklist, told how the data was collected, and here is a summary of the walkthroughs. Now, we recommend that you do at least 5 classroom walkthroughs.
Dr. Lamb told them last night that as long as they do 3.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And you can also collect archived walkthrough data from your principals if they are using the same checklist. And then we see the next figure is a summary of your survey. What percentage of your teachers answered yes or no, because that's the only 2 choices in Qualtrics that we're giving our teachers. And then I would expect to see some pie charts and graphs and those kinds of things. I don't know. Those look like they've moved around a little bit, Dr. Stedman, on that document. But, we should see some narrative work in with that. And then the last paragraph, this is the drum roll. And this is working with you and through your PLC. Where are the gaps in what the research says and what I see in my school, or I found in my school?
And everybody should consistently end with this gap analysis. And this is, you and the PLC, you have found this in your observations, but then you need to include, how you've shared this with your PLC and, how they have been involved in this decision making as well. But you need to be very plain with it. You see, they've done some good narrative work with this, Dr. Revis.
Okay. So in task 2, you are administering the survey and completing the walkthroughs with those instruments. You're comparing what the research says to what you find in your school, and you collaboratively work with your PLC to identify the gaps. And I like this diagram because to me, this is all about school improvement. At the bottom left hand, we see the current state, and that's what you're gauging when you're doing those walkthroughs and that survey. The middle part is your gap analysis. That's when you're facilitating that PLC and you're identifying the gaps. And then guess what we're going to do in task 3? Where do we want to go? We're going to have a little action plan here as well.
And Dr. Lamb said it differently last night. That's your action plan or your professional development plan, staff development plan. It's the same thing, because remember, this is a plan to improve teachers in your school. So that's why it's called a professional development plan or a professional
growth plan.
Growth plan, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I think we've talked about this already, Dr. Revis, the gap analysis.
I agree. And what you're doing is a needs assessment.
Okay, we've talked about that. You're doing that.
Let me tell you one pitfall that I see in task 1. You start wanting to do the survey, administer the survey, and start wanting to do the walkthroughs. You don't do that in task 1. That's in task 2. All you're doing is identifying it.
All you're doing in task 1 is getting approval for, we're saying, yes, you can use these instruments that you've created to do the work in task 2. That's all you're doing when you get there.
And then when you get in task 2, you start administering and collecting that data. And like I say, then you're going to organize your findings, present them to your PLC, and have a strong discussion, collaborative discussion about identifying gaps. And when we identify gaps, those are our areas for growth.
And then that goes into task 3 right there, what we just said, develop the action plan.
I had forgotten about that PowerPoint, but I love the graphic.
And there's one more thing I want to pull up before we stop, and we had done this some time back. Here it is. Needs assessment PowerPoint. Okay. This is looking at the whole thing, Dr. Revis. This is looking at AAPTEL Task 1 all the way through 4, very simplified. AAPTEL Task 1, remember, you're completing research and you're identifying a checklist and survey. AAPTEL Task 2, you're collecting data, survey and walkthrough, analyze data, and identifying gaps. AAPTEL Task 3, when you get to it, you're going to lead a PLC to develop the action plan, and you're going to present the action plan. And AAPTEL Task 4, you're going to do competency reflections as you've done before with the remaining 9 competencies, and you'll be through. Now, already, I'm going to stop sharing. Now, just think back the first time when Dr. Revis and I introduced you to the AAPTEL. Do you remember how overwhelming that seemed? Now, think about this time. Aren't you looking at this in an entirely different way as you're approaching the AAPTEL? Those fears and anxieties pretty much are no longer there, are they? You feel confident as you're moving into this that you can do it.
At least you gave you one of these.
Didn't we tell you that would happen? And I will tell you, and I mean this, I don't care how hard I am on any of you, and I know I've had to be hard on some, but it's because I want it to be at this point for everybody. Dr. Revis, and same thing. We want it to be at this point for everybody. And I couldn't be, we call ourselves mom and dad. I couldn't be a prouder dad at this point, with where you are overall, Dr. Revis. I believe for 3 classes, these are the highest overall scores that we have ever had
I agree.
going into. So, we don't backslide on us. Don't you go backwards. We only want to see, more improvements and stronger work coming out of you as you move forward. Now, I'm challenging you. You've got some good time ahead of you. Don't wait don't waste your time. I already know the work ethic of most of you, and I honestly believe that within the next week and a half at the most, I truly believe that you're going to have most of this work done that we've gone over today. I truly believe that. And Dr. Revis, if they move at the rate they have been moving, we'll be able to do some things differently before this semester is over with that we've never been able to do before.
Right. Well, I want you to take a moment to reflect
Right.
about the similarities and differences between what we did with the APTEL and what we're doing with the AAPTEL. APTEL is about student learning. The AAPTEL is about teacher learning, growth and improvement. And I remember Dr. Stedman said this, I don't know, very early on in our course. Being an administrator is about teaching teachers, not students, teaching teachers, to teach students, to be better teachers. So, but it doesn't matter what you're looking at. It doesn't matter if I'm looking at student performance and learning data, or teacher performance data, or student attendance, or whatever. Always use the same process. You collect your data. You analyze data. You pull a team together to talk about what the data, how to interpret the data, and what the data sets say to you. And then you build a plan with actionable steps and goals and targets. Don't care what it is. Don't care if it's about, who's going to get in elementary school, who gets to have an uninterrupted block of time first thing in the morning. Is it my primary grades or my upper elementary grades? Well, do some research. What does the research say? We, as educators, do a lot of things based on what other people tell us, our friends, and what we hear at conferences, which probably are pretty well research-based, but you don't know if it fits and meets your needs. But you've got to do your research, and you've got to collect data and do your research.
And Dr. Revis, you can remember, and I'm not picking on coaches by no means, but I can remember as a high school principal, every high school coach wanted to have a 4th period planning. But if you taught in a tested or a content area, tested area, that wasn't always possible. We had to do what was best for the students. And, sometimes we tried to make it work, but Dr. Revis, we couldn't always make it work because we had to do what was in the best interest of the students that we were serving.
And you're actually going to do a schedule. I guess is it in the OMA?
In 603, yes.
Yeah, you're going to do a schedule. You're going to talk about some of those things and some of those issues. We want this program to be able to be transferred into what you're doing on the job. But you got to apply it, guys. You got to work the plan. And, task 1, get that thing knocked out this week. It's just a matter of you rolling up your sleeves and doing the writing. You know what instruments you're going to use. You're either going to use your own walkthrough instrument or use Marzano's, and everybody's going to use the same survey. You knock that thing out. And if you get it done, you can go ahead and submit it and do your
Now-
peer review.
And I will say to those that have already submitted the AAPTEL Task 1, after tonight, you may want to go back and you may want to tweak some things. You know, like Dr. Revis said, we need to make sure that prompt 2 has enough to go with it, but you've got to take it through the peer review process as well too. But you know, quality work that was turned in, but that doesn't mean that you can't go back and fix some things about it. But you know,
And don't go on. Don't start putting your survey in Qualtrics until Dr. Stedman and I look at it and say you're good to go.
right.
And Dr. Lamb's going to show you how to do the Qualtrics. So
Right.
it's easy, guys, but there is a process you have to follow in order to get it live and for you to be able to get data.
Okay. Now, before we say that we're opening it up to general questions, you know, about anything, let's go back. Let's be specific, Dr. Revis. Are there any questions at this point about task 1 of the AAPTEL? Let's only focus on task 1 right now. Any question, Jeffrey?
In the directions for the background information about school and community, can we use what we use from the AAPTEL?
Yes, and that's explained in there. That will never change unless you move schools.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions about the AAPTEL Task 1? Everybody feel good about where you are? Okay, good. Thanks, Josh. I saw that. Okay, let's go to Task 2 because we won't be here. Okay, Danya?
Hey, so as far as the classroom observations go, is it okay or encouraged to go to intervention courses or like classes that have small group intervention, or are we trying to stick to just gen ed classrooms?
Um,
I would suggest you trying to stick to Gen Ed, but if you have, I mean,
I would too, Danya.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Again, if you can get in more than 3, that's going to give you more information that you can use. So, you know, a minimum of 3. But I would, like Dr. Revis said, I would try to get in at least 5 if I could.
And let me tell you something else I would suggest doing. Be a great learning experience for you. If you can corral one of your administrators, I'm not saying your principal, one of your administrators or your instructional coach, if you can corral somebody to go with you so that when you walk out of that classroom, you can debrief with them, it is a huge learning experience for you. It will be.
It's almost like a hospital called instructional rounds. It's almost like, you know, following the doctor around and then them talking afterwards. Adrian?
All right, so just to be sure, with the 5 on task 2, and you're going over the 5 different categories, at the end of each one of those, you are talking about the gaps, right?
Right,
The gap within that category.
right.
And then the gap analysis is for, I guess I'm confused, are we repeating the same thing over, or?
You pull it all together. You're doing a basic summary of all 5 at the end.
Okay.
You're talking about each one individually, and then at the very end, you're basically looking at what the overall gap is, and you can't always focus on everything. So
You may
at the end,
prioritize them.
your gap analysis could be that, you know, that based on the overall gaps being analyzed, the PLC team and I have concluded that, you know, that the most pressing need, you know, based on the gaps we see is or they are. And then you will use those as a focus when you start working on task 3.
So you don't have to necessarily mention all 5, but the overarching gap of the school is this,
That's
basically.
would you, I don't think they have to regurgitate all five, but
Right.
there needs to be enough blend of things, Adrian.
Okay,
And a connection. Make sure it's
Connection, yeah.
connected.
to what we've already said. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Very good. Very good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you,
Joshua,
Adrian.
Yeah, my question relates to the PLC. Can we utilize a different group of teachers this time from our first group? Is that okay? I think I heard that, but I just wanted to make sure.
absolutely, but make sure that you qualify that in a narrative somewhere in your work if you're going to do that. Okay.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much.
Okay. LaShonda,
Couple questions. One, is it okay if we have lost a member from the initial team?
yes. Are you going to replace the team member?
I'm going to try to. Our numbers were low, so we lost several teachers at the school.
Or do like I just told Joshua, make sure that somewhere you just do a disclaimer in there and you provide that information.
Okay, the next question, when it comes to doing the walkthroughs, would it be beneficial for us to do different grade levels and then try to do maybe like a beginning teacher, a veteran teacher, and kind of mix it up, or no?
I would say yes. I think that's a great idea.
Then the last question is, do you think would be a good idea to even ask since it's observation season, if we can kind of go in and do the observation, since the principal's going to be looking for certain things as well?
You're not going to do an observation. You're going to do walkthroughs. You're not at an evaluation point.
Okay.
Just remember, these are your peers, so you don't want to take it too far at this point.
Okay.
Okay. Emmy.
Hi there. My question, it kind of went along with hers. I know there was some discussion last night in the class about doing walkthroughs with our PLC members. Is that required, or can we do what she was talking about and kind of do a mixture?
You're not going to do walkthroughs with your PLC members. You're
In their classrooms.
in their class. No,
Okay.
They can be in their classroom or they can be anywhere. And I would ask my principal or my supervisor or my instructional coach, what do you recommend?
Okay.
That's always a good starting point too.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. These are good questions.
And guys, don't forget to look at the example that we have in the AAPTEL template and materials. There's a really good example in there. A couple, I think.
Okay. I want to see if something is still there, Dr. Revis, that
While you're looking, Tanya, how are you this evening?
I'm good. Title I meetings. Woohoo! Fun. I know we haven't moved to task 3, but I just want to, the PLC meeting should happen before we turn in task 3. Is that correct?
You will actually do a PLC meeting in task 2.
So that has to be part of the paper turn in on October 29th.
Yes.
That's Sunday.
Yes. Is that right?
Okay.
Yes.
We have
Task 1 does not require PLC.
right.
Task 2 does. Okay.
Okay. Because we have two
Okay,
teacher
good.
work days on the 30th and the 31st. I was trying to get those worked out. Thank you.
just remember, AAPTEL Task 1, and it's on your agenda. You've got the print your agenda out and look at it. Task 1 draft is due in discussion board no later than October 22nd. And then on October 29th, that's when your AAPTEL Task 1 has to be finally submitted, and you will put Task 2 in for draft no later than that. But again, I think most of you will have it finished before then. Mandy, hold your thought just a second. Again, I pulled this up just to, let me see if I can get it to, never mind. I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to do that. I've got that's confusing. Mandy, go ahead.
I have a quick question about the walkthroughs. This process has, not that I haven't known it and felt it for the last 2.5 years that I've been where I am, but coming from a school that was very high functioning, doing all the best practices, I know that there is not a school-wide used walkthrough. I know the former principal that was at my school, I know he actually trained and learned and took some of the stuff from the principal at my old school. So I have reached out to all the administrators and asked them for, some sort of walkthrough form that they used. But if there is truly nothing, because I've never seen any evidence of it, is it okay if I approach my former principal for what that we used as a walkthrough?
If it's not approved by your district and it's not used consistently, then that would not be a valid and research evidence-based instrument for your district.
Okay, but the former principal at my school is now at the district level. So if I approached him and asked him for that, that would possibly work?
That, and make sure you qualify that in your narrative work.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That works, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to ask, how are you feeling about, I know you said task 1, you felt good. How do you feel about moving into task 2 as well, knowing that we don't have, we're not coming together as a class next week? Do you feel equipped to be able to move forward both? That's great. And I thought that that's what your answers would be.
And don't forget, while it may be aggravating, you can always replay this Zoom video.
Right. You can look at my face and Dr.
Revis.
Travis, I'm sorry, I was going to say Dr. Lamb, his face as much as you want to. Elizabeth?
Yes, sir. I was wondering, just thinking ahead in terms of the communication with our PLC members, in the next projects, will those require PLC activities? I'm just trying to think of a time frame in terms of scheduling with meetings in the future.
Task 2 and task 3 will.
Okay, and then the following, like the next semester projects, do those require PLC sessions?
There's going to be a lot of case study work in Dex and 603, but you will do some, but not anything like you're doing now.
Okay, and would you advise continuing with the same group of PLC members for that session?
If it's working, then don't.
Okay.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Adrian?
Just really quickly, just going over the dates that stuff through. So next Sunday.
Okay, we can't hear you, Adrian.
26.
And then task 2 is the following Sunday.
The 29th.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing
Are you going to be available by email during the time that we're off the following that week?
Yes.
And
But at this point, remember, start relying on your Zoom team members to knock things around with. Your Zoom team is going to be the same Zoom team that you have throughout the program, unless somebody drops out and we have to rearrange, or unless, you say, it's just not working for me, will your next instructor move you, and we don't do that a whole lot. So you need to start, batting questions back and forth amongst your Zoom team members. But yes, be available.
And when you send work to us, when you get ready to send like task 1 for us to review, for peer and instructor review, don't put in there, don't take literally, when you say rough draft, don't even put that in there for us, because I don't want it to be a rough draft. I want it to be as accomplished as you possibly can make it the first time. So don't take that as meaning, well, I can just submit something in there and I'm going to, we're beyond all of that. Okay. This is task 2. You're out of boot camp now. Now you're soldiers. So we want you to represent us well. Okay.
And again, don't forget APA style. You're doing a lot of research in task 1. Don't forget how to properly do your in-text citations and how to properly do your bibliography. If you can't remember, guys, go back and look at what you did in the APSL. Okay.
Okay. Okay, guys, you're going to do well. So I want you to work, Dr. and Revis and me hard with good work coming in over the next 2 weeks. Make us even prouder. Okay. Okay, guys, we will see you in a couple of weeks. We'll send you a reminder, just to remind you, we are back in class when it's time to get back in class. Okay.
Have a good evening and a good break.
Okay. Bye.
Dr. Seven, we have
Okay,
class Thursday, right?
Yeah, we do. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Third
Okay.
thing, Elizabeth, we do have our coaching session 5 on Thursday at 7 o'clock. The same Zoom link that you've used in the past with Thursday night classes. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Liz.
Dr. Revis,
Yes,
this is Octavia. Could I hang on after everybody's off?
sure.
Okay.
Dr. Stedman.
Yeah, this you, Thomas?
Yes. Did you get my
Hey,
email?
Thomas, I haven't looked. When did you send it?
I sent it during class. I just need to
Okay,
speak to you
no,
privately at one
I
point.
don't ever look at those.
Okay.
Yes, I'll look at it though, and I'll reach out to you if I need to. Okay.
Yeah, it just said I need to speak to you privately. That's all.
Oh. Okay. Well, hold on. If you'll just hold on.
Okay.
We'll talk in just a minute. Okay.
You want to do a breakout room? Octavia, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
All I can see is a light fix. Okay,
Oh, I'm
now I
sorry.
can, yeah.
Okay, there we go. Can you
All
see?
right, good.
And I have a real quick question. I didn't want to bring it up in the whole thing, but it's real quick though. It's probably going to be a
Okay.
yes or no. Do you guys ever have any issue with schools not wanting all that information from the school? Do
Oh,
they
yeah.
ever say no, we're not going to let you do that?
Oh yeah.
But now, Adrian, reach out to your clinical coach 1 that visited with you and your principal. Sometimes they have to be reminded that they agree to allow this. And if you run into one of the things that you need to try to do is to you work around it if you can, and you find another way to get what you need without making it a big deal, because you've still got to
Right.
work there.
Right.
But if it's something that you can't get around, then reach out to your clinical coach 1 and see if they can help you.
Okay.
Adrian, are they not wanting to allow you to do like the survey and the walkthroughs?
Well, I don't know yet.
But okay.